So welcome everyone. My name is Andrea Tessier. I'm a licensed realtor with Phipps Real Estate Group and CIR Realty here in Calgary. And I'm an investor myself, also owning rental properties here in Calgary. And today I'm super excited to be joined by our client, Taylor. Taylor, I'd love for you just to maybe give a quick introduction of yourself and to dive right into how you got involved in real estate investing. What was your motivation and inspiration?
Oh, thanks, Andrea. I appreciate the opportunity. I've never done one of these before. This is the first one, so it's very exciting for me. Yeah, my name's Taylor Caldwell. I'm in my 20s and I'm now a real estate investor. I'm actually a full-time engineer working on projects around Calgary, but I'm also a part-time real estate investor now. And I guess I never thought about real estate investing throughout most of my life, except for maybe a few years before I really got into it. I always knew like I wanted to get a house one day. Maybe I wanted to offset the mortgage somehow, but I didn't have the network. I didn't know what to do, didn't have much knowledge or money. And so I was kind of just at a stalemate of thinking of it, but not taking any action. And it's funny, I think that typically if your parents are into real estate investing, a lot of times their kids will also get into it. And my parents are not into real estate investing, so I had no prior knowledge of it, no introduction. So I was kind of just jumping in deep on my own, trying to figure things out. And eventually I came across this little ad for Keyspire. If any of you have heard of Keyspire, I'm a member of Keyspire now. And I thought it was a scam at first. It seemed kind of sketchy, and I was looking at reviews and wasn't sure, is this legit or not? But I managed to get a hold of a few of the members who had mutual connections with me, and they reassured me, no, Taylor, it's legit. It's really awesome. You should definitely join. So I joined a webinar that was, I think, 3 days long, and then became a member. And it was a really good introduction, and it was exactly what I was looking for. Put me set up with a coach, all this knowledge and resources that are useful to getting into real estate investing, and just just jumped into it and started looking at properties with Andrea and made a connection there. And now I'm going strong.
Yeah, I think those groups are so powerful to be a part of. There's a lot of knowledge to be shared there. And like you mentioned, if you don't necessarily have family members or friends that are kind of pushing you towards investing in real estate or have that experience, those groups can be so valuable to get your foot in the door and start to get some learning and networking and knowledge that way. And I was chatting with Taylor before this call because I was saying when Taylor and I first met and he reached out to look at properties, like he jumped right in, and I was so impressed because he said he was looking for his first property. And I think we analyzed a lot of properties together before we found the right one. And that's part of the process, absolutely. Going through lots of different listings, viewing some properties, doing the analysis on them so that you're able to learn the process and what would make sense. And also it took a little while to find the right one. And the project that you chose, it was not a little undertaking. It was a big renovation project. So I was so impressed by that for your first investment property that you were eager to jump right in and find the right opportunity, even if that meant that it was going to be a lot of work. So you want to share a little bit about the project that you've been working on and now it's completely finished and fully rented out, but I'd love for you to share a little bit more about,
Certainly,
yeah, about
no
that.
problem. Yeah, I guess I joined Keyspire in November of 2021, and then within 4 months, I had acquired two properties, which I guess I would have never thought of a year ago that that would happen. And like Andrew, you were saying, yes, they were both renovations. One was a private sale, and one was the property that you walked me through, and they happened to be around the same time. So it was a lot to coordinate and manage two big renovation projects at the same time, but I guess that's one of my skill sets that I could utilize and capitalize on. So it kind of came naturally to me, even though there were stressful parts. And the bonus one we'll talk about mostly. It's an up down. It had an illegal basement suite, and it was in terrible shape. As I'm sure you remember walking through, it was not very livable. It was stinky, gross. There's definitely not taken care of well. And no one in their right mind looking for a dream house would walk into this place and say, yes, I'm going to buy it. But an investor who has vision and interest in trying to add value and turn it into something great, it's an awesome opportunity. And we got a great deal on it in the end of it. I can talk about that a bit later, but there were some risks going into it. I intended on living in the basement once we legalized the suite. And I used my parents' HELOC to put down payment on, pay for renovations. I have a good contractor connection who helps me with the renovations, and he does a very good job. So I use him. And although it was a daunting task, I decided to pursue it with my positive mindset and optimistic approach. And it paid off because there was quite a process of applying for the secondary suite to begin with. I guess it was Bowness, the area of Bowness was acquired by the city way back when. It used to be its own town. And when the city acquired it, they actually applied a blanket zoning on all of the properties or all the duplexes as RC1, which was not correct because that's actually for a single detached dwellings, and duplexes are not single detached dwellings. So we knew that was a risk, but we figured, okay, RC1 zoning, you're allowed a discretionary use for secondary suites. So we figured, they'll probably approve it. Shouldn't be an issue, but if it is an issue, we still have a backup plan and we're prepared for it. We can get through this. And sure enough, when I tried to apply for the secondary suite building permit, they said, no, it's not zoned right. You have to go through this land use amendment process, which can take 3 to 6 months. And we're like, okay, here's that roadblock we were talking about and prepared for, but we'll keep chugging along. I tried to convince them that it was incorrectly zoned back when the city acquired Bowness. So I talked to a few of the city people, but they weren't willing to budge. They still made you go down this process, this lengthy and expensive process, which actually it can cost $5,000 just to do this land use amendment, which is not ideal, but I made some calls. I had a pre-application meeting for the zoning or the zoning amendment, and they said they recommend contacting the ward councillor for Bowness. So I did that, reached out to the councillor, discussed my situation with them and how it's kind of silly to go through such a crazy process for something that the city made a mistake on back when they acquired Bowness. And she did some digging and actually found a bylaw that was enacted to allow certain properties in Bowness specifically to have this land use amendment waived, the fee waived. So I was able to save up to $5,000 just from a few phone calls and putting in some time to find the root cause and see if there's any workarounds. So that was a good barrier that we overcome. However, it doesn't mean that you can skip the land use amendment. You still have to go through that process, which is okay. We pushed through it. It ended up being a 4-month process from start to finish. You have a pre-application meeting, and they submit it. I guess once you submit it, you can do community outreach. So I got to know the neighbors. I chatted with them, said what my intentions are. They might see some things come in the mail. And sure enough, they got some mail from the city explaining the situation, and they had a lot of questions, but I was happy to answer them. Once you submit the application, it goes through a whole circulation of review and comments. It goes to a planning committee, a Calgary Planning Commission, I think it is. And then lastly, a public hearing. And so you can tune in on the public hearing, which I did because I was like, fingers crossed, please, please, please. After all this work, don't turn me down.
Yeah.
And luckily it was approved. I listened in and they approved it. But it was redesignated to an RC2, which you're allowed secondary suites for. And interestingly enough, I added a little comment in my application about how I noticed this is a recurrent thing for Bowness residents with this kind of zoning issue, and that it's a nuisance for people to go through this process to legalize suites, which might be a deterrent for the city, for people wanting to legalize it because it's such a process. And I'm like, if you guys want people to legalize suites, it might be a good idea to maybe make it easier for the situation. And so they actually brought that up and discussed it a bit and passed a motion to investigate whether or not they can make an exception for bonus properties that are subject to these hardships or burdens that might be experienced due to the improper zoning at the start when they acquired bonus. So hopefully, I don't know what the status of that is, but I hope it goes somewhere because it could save a lot of people a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of hassle.
That's great. That's great that you put that note in there, Taylor. And for anyone who's not super familiar with Calgary, so Bonus is a community located on the northwest end of the city. As Taylor mentioned, it previously was a town, so it's an older community that, you know, was formed, or the city kind of absorbed at some point. And so there are a lot of older homes in that area, but we're seeing a lot of gentrification, many infills going in, and a lot of development and excitement around that area. Taylor is actually working with his job on the Ring Road project. So the Calgary Ring Road, right now it's still a C road. The last section is not complete, but once that last section is complete, it's going to provide really great ease of access for the northwest and southwest quadrants of the city, and really access to the entire city. The road goes all the way around the city. There's no lights on it, so it, along with that big transportation development, there's also going to be a lot more development we're seeing around those areas for new amenities and things like that. And we're already, I think, seeing that, you know, within just above Bowness, there is the Greenwich community, which has the brand new Calgary's West Farmers Market. Right across from there at COP, there's Trinity Hills and all the development and amenities that are going in there. The community is close to the Bow River. It's on the west end of the city, so easy access to the mountains. So there's a lot of excitement and a lot of positive things happening in this community. But like Taylor mentioned, he did have to go through some hurdles. But I think your positive attitude and just persistence, Taylor, is what has made you so successful. Because I think seeing some of those hurdles, we talked about it when you were considering the offer, when you were putting it in on that property and going through the due diligence period. We had looked at the zoning and kind of discussed, okay, you know, this looks like it's a bit of a unique scenario. These are some things that may happen. And I think that may have scared off a lot of other people, seeing that and, you know, knowing that there was some risk there, but saying that you had kind of plan A, B, and C in place so that you could still move forward, that was really positive for sure.
I remember you showing it to me and being like, just remember, you don't have to take this one. There's lots of opportunities out there. Because it was like, it looked like it was on its last legs. Like, we got this. Let's just do it.
Yeah, you had it for sure. And it was a very unique property for a number of reasons. It was actually in the process of going into a foreclosure, but was not already foreclosed upon. So the bank, our lender, had not yet taken possession of this property, but it ended up being a very, I think, win-win situation, because we were able to get in before it did go into foreclosure, so that the owners of that property were able to take the money that they then received for the sale of their property to pay off their debt and move on to something else. And you were able to get into this great property that needed some work, but where had potential for a lot of value add.
That was a great experience. After all that was just for the land use amendment as well.
That was the
After
first
the
part,
land
yeah.
use amendment, you got to go into the secondary suite application, but that's a whole nother beast.
Yeah, so tell us more about, I guess, the property now. If you want to speak a little bit more about the secondary suite process and the finished product also. I'd love to hear a little bit
It's
more about
actually
that.
quite simple for the secondary suite application once you are designated RC2, which, like I said before, you're allowed to have secondary suites. You just have to get a building permit to do so, and then work through that process. The only caveat is during these 4 months of doing this whole land use amendment process, you're not allowed to do renovations in the secondary suite until it's approved. So I was kind of on hold, waiting until it was approved before I could start doing renovations in the basement suite. Luckily, during this time, I was able to still do renovations on the main floor and the landscaping. So I was still keeping my contractor busy and things were still getting done. And once it was finally approved, we said, let's go. Let's apply for the secondary suite building permit. That was super fast. Once they approved it, you can start doing renovations. There were some minor renovations we did before the secondary suite application was submitted. It's not recommended and it can be risky. You just have to know what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. The city needs to be able to verify that there was an existing illegal secondary suite there before. So if you do too many renovations before that process starts, they might be able to say, no, this was not an illegal secondary suite. You have to actually consider it as a new secondary suite and go through this whole different process, which is a lot more complex. And I wanted to take advantage of the amnesty period that the city had, which waives some fees for applying for secondary suites and building permits. And so I took advantage of that. I think they extended it another year now. So I believe it expires end of this year. And I have a feeling they're going to keep doing that for a little bit. But it's a good way to motivate people to legalize suites and make them safer for people. So,
Yeah. Maybe
oh,
you
yeah.
will speak a little bit to that too, Taylor, just for anyone, again, who's not familiar with the amnesty period or is not from Calgary. So to give you a little more background information about that, prior to March 2018, the city of Calgary was turning a bit of a blind eye to illegal secondary suites, which there are a lot of them in the city. But within the last several years, they've been focusing on a promotion of really encouraging anyone that has these existing illegal suites to go through the process to legalize them. So they've provided an amnesty period, which, as Taylor mentioned, is in place until the end of this year, so December 31st, 2023, where if you have an existing illegal secondary suite, and that has to have been added in a property prior to March 2018. So that's an important date. In order for it to apply to the amnesty period, it must have been added prior to March 2018. If you have this type of suite in a property, then you can go through the process to legalize just to fire code. So for fire code, the big parts of it are safety. You know, the bedroom windows in the basement have to be egress. There has to be a separate entrance into the suite. Smoke detectors need to be interconnected between the basement and the upper unit. So if they go off in one, they go off in the other. And the furnace utility room has to be drywalled with a smoke tight seal. So those are some of the bigger main things. And a big part of that is safety, ensuring that if there was a fire, that your occupants would be able to exit safely. So they've said that you can go through this process to legalize to fire code. As Taylor mentioned, they're also waiving some of the permitting fees, encouraging people to do this. If you are adding a brand new suite or you are legalizing one that was built after that March 2018 date, you have to then do it to building code, which there is a fairly significant difference. For building code, you have to have a secondary heat source. So, excuse me, that could be a second furnace, or it could be baseboard heating with a separate HRV system. So no shared air between the units. Sorry, got something in my throat all of a sudden. So fairly significant cost difference there. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna need some water. Okay, there we go. I think I got it. So Taylor was able to take advantage of this amnesty period with this property, which was really exciting to see. And the city of Calgary has a really great registry system. So once a property has met all the requirements to be legalized, you've done all your inspections, gone through the permitting process, it actually gets registered on the City of Calgary website, and you can go on there and look up any address and you'll be able to see if there is a legal suite registered on there.
If it's approved, they also send you some fun stickers you can put on the doors or windows, which was kind of nice. It's a good little badge saying, good job, here you go.
You've met the requirements, and for tenants too, to know that the property, you know, is legal, it's safe. I think that's huge.
Definitely. And it attracts people. They want to be in a legitimate basement suite or secondary suite, and it helps give them that reassurance.
That's right. Taylor, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna grab a glass of water really quick.
Oh, that's right.
I've got something stuck in my throat. Just give me one moment.
All good. I can chat a bit while you're gone about analysis and stuff. So I'm pretty conservative and careful with numbers. I'm very picky and want to make sure I get a good bang for my buck. And especially when you're dealing with large sums of money, it was quite intimidating at the start. But with the right support network and right training, and I love my Excel spreadsheets. So I was just, like you said before, I was doing tons of analysis, just getting used to the process and seeing things to consider. And based on that, I guess that's how I narrowed down that I wanted to pursue this property. I also did a very in-depth community research in Calgary. Calgary has some pretty good stats on every community. You can go on their website and find like population projections and about the demographics and things like that. And I looked at every single community in Calgary, everyone, and made a ginormous spreadsheet again, and just compared what I wanted, what I was looking for, and narrowed down to communities. And Bowness was one of the top communities that I was interested in based on that.
Absolutely. I think that's
You're
such a
better
great
now.
way about it. You
Yeah.
identified, like, again, with those stats and using resources, which there are a lot of those resources out there. So that's awesome to hear. Do you, in hindsight, is there any advice or information now that you've gone through the process that you would share with investors that are new or who may be going through a similar process?
Keep an open mind, be prepared, and talk to as many people as you can, do as much research as you can, but don't get stuck in the analysis paralysis and the fear to let you stop you from doing what you want to do. If you believe in yourself and there's a support network who believes in you and it's the right decision, you got to push through the comfort zone and go for it. I'm so happy I did. It was all worth it. The cash flow on this place is outstanding. I would have never guessed it'd be this high, especially with the rising rental rates. And I'm so glad I did it. Just take your time too. You don't have to jump into anything. Wait till you feel comfortable and just do your due diligence as well. And yeah, talking to people, hear their stories, see what gripes they went through, what challenges they overcame. And I mean, I know once I joined Keyspire and other real estate investing networks, I talked to so many people before I even started looking at properties because I wanted to get as much knowledge and try to learn from other people's mistakes and experiences before doing this, just to set me on the right path.
I think that's really great advice. And there are so many wonderful groups out there that you can join. Some of them, have membership fees, and then there's others that are free as well. So depending on, what type of support or network you're looking for, I think there are lots of options out there, definitely. So what's next for you, Taylor? Tell us a little bit about what's on the horizon and your plans for the next property.
Good question. Well, I'd say now that I have both places rented and they're cash flowing now, I can get back into it. Right when it starts getting a bit quiet, that's when you're supposed to go find a new project and keep yourself busy. Because I like keeping busy and I really enjoy real estate and I've learned to love it a lot. And I think it's definitely meant for me. Um, so as an investor, I'm open to all sorts of opportunities. I recently was interested in potentially pursuing properties in the US, but I decided not yet. I want to focus on my own living arrangements in Calgary and projects in Canada first. So I guess my first priority is looking for properties with legal basement suites to pretty much do what I did again with Bonus, but this time I'd house hack and actually live in the basement or main floor. And for house hacking, I guess I just explained what it is, but if you don't know what that is, it's when you buy a property, intend on living in some of it and intend on renting some of it to help subsidize your mortgage and expenses. And it's a great way for first-time investors and new investors to get into the market, dip their toes, and keep track of their tenants as well, I guess, if they want to really stay on top of them. And so that's my priority, is looking for a place in Calgary where I can live and rent out at the same time. I am interested in pursuing a more fun and creative side of things as well, though. So I'm looking at short-term rentals, potentially in Alberta. I think Alberta has a lot of potential, and evidently it's been attracting a lot of people recently as well from other provinces. There's been tons of interprovincial migration to Alberta, and it's only going to keep on improving, I think. But I'm looking at small, unique stays like yurts or tiny homes or even converted school buses or converted shipping containers. And I think they're very economical, pretty cheap, but unique. And if you convert them and have the vision for what you want them to become, then I think they're great opportunities. So that's something I'm starting to look into right now, just in the preliminary phases. But I'm a huge Jurassic Park fan, so I'm looking right now at a dinosaur-themed converted school bus in the Badlands potentially. And another idea I had was, if you've heard of the show The Last of Us, it's a huge popular show right now, and I'm thinking of potentially capitalizing on its popularity and the trend, I guess, it's setting and bringing people to Alberta. Also a fan of zombies, so I'm thinking of making some sort of zombie or apocalyptic type stay somewhere near like filming locations where they shot some of these scenes.
Cool. Well, you'll definitely have to keep us updated. I'm sure we'll have some interested investors, even locally, who will want to check out some of these unique opportunities for sure. And like you mentioned, it's been interesting to see. Definitely, there's been a lot of demand, not only in the long-term rental market in Calgary and surrounding areas, but also the short-term rental market. As you mentioned, the interprovincial migration numbers have been quite high over the last year, and people are moving here and need long-term stays, but also short-term stays while they're checking out the areas. If they're planning to move here long-term, they may need a short-term rental stay for a weekend when they come visit, or, for an extended period while a home is being built or while they're searching for a home. And a lot of the reasons why people are moving here is because it is still generally affordable in comparison to other big centers in Canada, because of job opportunities and diversification that's happening within the industry in Alberta and Calgary specifically, and as well as because of the lifestyle. You're less than an hour away from the mountains, beautiful areas like Drumheller, the Badlands that are close by as well to explore. I think with a lot of people being able to work remotely, having that freedom to be able to drive out to the mountains, drive out to some of these other areas is really a big draw also. So I think definitely there's a demand for that. And it sounds like you have some great ideas for really unique properties, Taylor. So that's awesome.
That's exciting. Like I said, I'm still learning, still going through a lot of new things, but I always enjoy taking on challenges and pushing through and just having fun with it. You got to have fun with it.
For sure. And that's so great. That's one of the things I love about you, is that you have such a positive attitude, and even if you're faced with hurdles, you're persistent, willing to push through it, and with that positive attitude, which is amazing. So Taylor, how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more about what you've done or what you're doing going forward? What's the best way?
I've got an email address. You can probably put it in the chat later, but it's
Yeah.
tcaldwell.re@gmail.com. It's T then dot T, my last name, at gmail.com. And then also my phone number is 403-862-2274. Yeah, I'm happy to chat about my experiences, and I'm always eager to learn from others and just talk and network and see what people have to say and what people are up to. There's a lot of things out there, and it's a very exciting world we live in. Very interesting, especially with technology. And yeah, I'm interested in looking for any private lenders, money partners for projects. Happy to chat. Feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. We'll link your email address in the chat below, and I'll put it on our YouTube channel as well once this video is updated. So, well, Taylor, are there any final points or anything else that you wanted to share? I think you shared a lot of really insightful information.
It's been an interesting, like I said, I'm just new to this, and it's been interesting because as more of my friends and family hear about what I'm doing and the projects I'm working on, then they start asking questions. Before they weren't interested. They're kind of like, "You're crazy. What are you doing? Just be careful." And now they're like, "How did you do that? Like, what are you guys doing? I want to learn more. What do you look at?" And so it's fun to see that transition of, I must be doing something right if it's raising interest in people.
Yeah.
One last thing I would say as well is I'm a co-founder of a technology company in Calgary called Vivid Spectrum, and we focus on doing virtual tours for local businesses, but we also do help out with the real estate industry, which obviously I work closely with. So if anyone's interested in looking for virtual tours or drone shots or photography or videos for their businesses or for their own properties, feel free to reach out to me and I can put you in touch with my work email address for that.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Taylor. Great. Well, thank you again for joining me today. It was so nice to chat with you, and I can't wait to see where things go next. We'll definitely be watching out for some of those STRs.
Me too. The one thing that's constant is change. So who knows what I'll be doing in the next year or 2 years, but it's always fun to see what's out there. And thanks a lot for the opportunity. I appreciate it. It was great chatting.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Okay, Taylor, well, I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on here. I will check through as well after if there's any additional comments or questions, and we'll link Taylor's information below.